Good day, all. It's finally an absolutely wonderful day up here in the great Northeast. Uh, anyway, a friend requested for me to do a reading from The Lord of the Rings. And if you know me, you know that that's, pretty much at the top of my top 10 list of favorite stories. Um, and then I realized that this is another example of literature that moved me, um, like the Iliad that I shared the other day. A little bit of background here. When I was 17 years old, I had a very unfortunate, violent encounter, which required me to do some days convalescing at home, and I absorbed this book during that time. I think I read all three books in 3 days, and when I finished the story, I wept because I was never going to be able to read it again for the first time. And it really struck me right to the core. And speaking with a friend some years ago, he offered an explanation as to why at that time it may have hit me as hard as it did, and I'll share that with you at the end. But anyway, this is the end of the story. This is the very final passage where Frodo is making his journey to the Grey Havens to leave Middle Earth. And I'm going to start where he meets Bilbo on the road. Ready? Here we go. Then Bilbo woke up and opened his eyes. "Hello, Frodo," he said. "Well, I have passed the old Took today, so that's settled. And now I think I am quite ready to go on another journey. Are you coming?" "Yes, I am coming," said Frodo. "The ring-bearers should go together." "Where are you going, master?" cried Sam, though at last he understood what was happening. "To the Havens, Sam," said Frodo. "And I can't come." "No, Sam. Not yet, anyway. Not further than the Havens. Though you too were a ring-bearer, if only for a little while. Your time may come. Do not be too sad, Sam. You cannot be always torn in two. You will have to be one and whole for many years. You have so much to enjoy and to be and to do." "But," said Sam, and tears started in his eyes, "I thought you were going to enjoy the Shire too for years and years, after all you have done." "So I thought too, once. But I have been too deeply hurt, Sam. I tried to save the Shire, and it has been saved, but not for me. It must often be so, Sam, when things are in danger. Someone has to give them up, lose them, so that others may keep them. But you are my heir. All that I had and might have had I leave to you. And also you have Rose and Eleanor, and Frodo lad will come, and Rosie lass, and Merry, and Goldilocks, and Pippin, and perhaps more that I cannot see. Your hands and your wits will be needed everywhere. You will be the mayor, of course, as long as you want to be, and the most famous gardener in history. And you will read things out of the Red Book and keep alive the memory of the age that is gone, so that people will remember the great danger, and so love their beloved land all the more. And that will keep you as busy and as happy as anyone can be, as long as your part of the story goes on. Come now, ride with me." Then Elrond and Galadriel rode on, for the third age was over, and the days of the rings were past, and an end was come of the story and song of those times. With them went many elves of the high kindred who would no longer stay in Middle-earth, and among them, filled with a sadness that was yet blessed, and without bitterness, rode Sam, and Frodo, and Bilbo, and the elves delighted to honor them. Though they rode through the midst of the Shire all the evening and all the night, none saw them pass, save the wild creatures, or here and there some wanderer in the dark, who saw a swift shimmer under the trees, or a light and shadow flowing through the grass as the moon went westward. And when they had passed from the Shire, going about the south skirts of the White Downs, they came to the far downs and to the towers, and looked on the distant sea. And so they rode down at last to Mithlond, to the Grey Havens, in the long firth of Lune. As they came to the gates, Círdan the shipwright came forth to greet them. Very tall he was, and his beard was long, and he was gray and old, save that his eyes were keen as stars, and he looked at them and bowed and said, "All is now ready." Then Círdan led them to the havens, and there was a white ship lying, and upon the quay, beside a great gray horse, stood a figure robed all in white, awaiting them. As he turned and came towards them, Frodo saw that Gandalf now wore openly on his hand the third ring, Narya the Great, and the stone upon it was red as fire. Then those who were to go were glad, for they knew that Gandalf also would take ship with them. But Sam was now sorrowful at heart, and it seemed to him that if the parting would be bitter, more grievous still would be the long road home alone. But even as they stood there, and the elves were going aboard, and all was being made ready to depart, up rode Merry and Pippin in great haste, and amid his tears Pippin laughed. "You tried to give us the slip once before and failed, Frodo," he said. "This time you have nearly succeeded, but you have failed again. It was not Sam, though, that gave you away this time, but Gandalf himself." "Yes," said Gandalf, "for it will be better to ride back 3 together than 1 alone. Well, here at last, dear friends, on the shores of the sea, comes the end of our fellowship in Middle-earth. Go in peace. I will not say, do not weep, for not all tears are an evil." Then Frodo kissed Merry and Pippin, and last of all Sam, and went aboard. And the sails were drawn up, and the wind blew. And slowly the ship slipped away down the long gray firth, and the light of the glass of Galadriel that Frodo bore glimmered and was lost. And the ship went out into the high sea and passed on into the west, until at last, on a night of rain, Frodo smelled a sweet fragrance on the air, and he heard the sound of singing that came over the water. And then it seemed to him that, as in his dream in the house of Bombadil, the gray rain curtain turned all to silver glass and was rolled back, and he beheld white shores, and beyond them a far green country under a swift sunrise. But to Sam, the evening deepened to darkness as he stood at the haven, and as he looked at the gray sea he saw only a shadow on the waters that was soon lost in the west. There still he stood far into the night, hearing only the sigh and murmur of the waves on the shores of Middle-earth, and the sound of them sank deep into his heart. Beside him stood Merry and Pippin, and they were silent. At last the 3 companions turned away, and never again looking back, they rode slowly homewards, and they spoke no word to one another until they came back to the Shire, but each had great comfort in his friends on the long gray road. At last they rode over the downs and took the east road, and then Merry and Pippin rode on to Buckland, and already they were singing again as they went. But Sam turned to Bywater, and so came back up the hill as day was ending once more. And he went on, and there was yellow light and fire within, and the evening meal was ready, and he was expected. And Rose drew him in, and set him in his chair, and put little Eleanor upon his lap. He drew a deep breath. "Well, I'm back," he said. And so it ends. So, discussing this event and how it impacted me one time, my friend said that this is a story that resonated with me so powerfully because of not just the situation I was in, but how old I was as a 17-year-old. Because the end of this story is it's a story of the end of magic. You know, the elves going back to the west and the age being done and gone. The end of magic, like the end of childhood. So, as an adolescent, as a late adolescent, this reached down deep into me, and it plucked that cord, which is a wonderful example of the power of literature, how it can reach down into us and spark strong emotions. I hope you enjoyed that. Anyway, enjoy the day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.